We stepping up to the pulpit, showing you the wisdom in the employee rights toolkit. Equip employees with the tools they need to speak up for themselves when they stuck in the weeds. Discrimination real, fight back your employee Miranda right. You can ignite that. EEOs, yeah, we cover them all, making sure you know your rights, it ain't no wonder at all. We stepping up to the pulpit, showing you the wisdom in the employee rights toolkit. This the employee rights toolkit.
What's up? Welcome to the Employee Rights Toolkit, the podcast where we equip employees with the tools they need to speak up for themselves against discrimination. I'm your host and employee advocate, Lady X. The purpose of our podcast is to educate employees on their rights related to anti-discrimination and harassment. And today we have a special guest who's going to help us do that. We have Takesha Stephens, who has a unique experience and unique insights on speaking up for yourself. In today's episode, we'll discuss the steps that she took to speak up for herself. So welcome to the podcast, Takesha.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. To start things off, tell us a little bit about your background.
So my background is actually, my corporate side is GIS analyst, and that's Geographic Information Systems analyst. I worked for the city for a little short of 14 years. I was laid off in 2012. I had two positions, one as an engineering drafter, and my second role was a GIS technician. After that, a few years later, I was employed by the Land Timber and Development Company in Fernandina as a GIS analyst. So with them, I pretty much just created maps for acquisitions and things of that sort.
Okay, and so what are you doing now?
So right now, I'm a business owner.
Okay.
The name of my business is Cocktails with Keisha. I am an oncology trained esthetician, professional makeup artist, and a permanent makeup artist.
Okay, so you went from an employee to an entrepreneur.
Right.
Okay, so what's the name of your business?
Cocktails with Keisha. And you can find my website is actually www.cocktailswithkeisha. Cocktails start with the K. So that's KOCKTAILS with KESHA. Cocktails with Keisha. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, so we're going to get started. I want you to tell us a little bit about the incident where you had to speak up for yourself, and I'm going to give you the floor to just get us started.
So actually, it was two occasions. The first one, I was a fairly new employee, like a rookie. I started with the city in 1999, so 2001, I filed a grievance. So what happened was I was in the Streets and Drainage Division, and there was another division called the Engineering Division. There was a young Caucasian dude that they hired. We had the same role, did the same duties. I had a degree. I had a 2-year degree. He didn't have a degree, and he was getting paid. His salary was $15,000 more than mine. So when I found out, I filed a grievance, of course, and there's a process you have to go through. Luckily, I was a union member, so I didn't have to fight for myself. I had someone representing me. It was a journey because they tried to make it difficult for me. I didn't give up, and it took probably about 6 months because they tried to stretch the thing out as long as they could. I ended up winning. They had to not only match my salary, they had to pay me retro. So my punishment was they sent me out to work out in the field. Mm-hmm. So they switched locations from where I was working, which was a win for me because I didn't have to pay for parking. So,
Okay.
Fast forward over 20 years later, the second company, the Land Timber and Development, as a GIS analyst.
Okay.
The company had 500 employees.
Okay.
With less than 20 minority employees. I worked in Fernandina Beach, and there were probably less than about 5 minorities in that actual building. It's
Mm-hmm.
2 Black ladies. I was a GIS analyst. The other Black lady was an accountant. There was 1 Black dude that was in IT and 1 Black male attorney that left for unknown reasons. And then we had, I think, 1 or 2 Hispanics
Mm-hmm.
and an Asian guy. I was on a small team. So on my team, it was myself, 2 Caucasian dudes, an older Caucasian female, and my boss, my supervisor, was a Caucasian female.
Mm-hmm.
Well, long story short, she showed favoritism towards the 2 guys.
The
She was
Caucasian guys.
the Caucasian guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was me and 1 Caucasian guy. We had the same role as a GIS analyst. So we pretty much did the same thing. She would give him larger projects. So he would get all the recognition in meetings. She would always talk about things that he would do. I was forced to work with the other Caucasian guy who she favored. I found out that they were hanging out on the weekends. They were doing things outside of the job. They had developed a relationship, her family and his family, outside of the job.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, anything that he would tell her about me, she would believe.
Okay.
So I filed my first complaint with HR, and they halfway investigated it, met with the both of us, and decided that we just needed to communicate better. I was okay with that. Not even a month later, my supervisor wrote me up out of retaliation.
And so what makes you think that it was retaliation when she wrote you up after that?
Because all of the things that was on her, I guess, report
Mm-hmm.
about me
Mm-hmm.
were not true.
Okay.
One thing that I learned, one thing I learned as a city employee,
Mm-hmm.
and having gone through something similar before, was to document everything. So all of my work was documented. I kept records of everything. Whenever I had a complaint, I would email everything, print out a hard copy of it, keep records, as well as write things down.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that she had on this report against me, I had documentation reviewing it. So they tried to force me, she and her friend in HR. There was a lot of cliques within this company,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the HR lady that called me in to meet with my ex-supervisor, they were friends too, and she too would hang out with the guy that's on my team.
Oh.
They would dog sit for each other, go out to lunch, just hang out with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So she calls me in this office with my ex-supervisor. They give me this report saying I'm being written up. And I'm like, I'm not signing it. And she said, well, you have to. No, I don't. I do not have to sign anything.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, you leave that right there and you'll hear from my attorney. So at that point, they were shaking in their boots because they
So
didn't.
I was going
I
to
was,
ask, when you
uh-huh.
told them they would hear from your attorney, did you continue to work there or did you leave?
I,
Did you quit?
I continued to work there.
Okay.
I then immediately went to my desk and filed another complaint through. There was supposed to be an outside source where you can make complaints.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the name of it, but there's an outside source where a lot of these jobs hire third party companies
Mm-hmm.
for you to file a complaint. I filed the complaint, and again, I always keep proof. So
Mm-hmm.
once I filed the complaint, I made a copy of it. Fast forward, probably about a week later, I'm being called in another meeting with my supervisor and her supervisor. So now I'm being put on a performance review. So I'm having to meet with her 3 times a week. She and her boss 3 times a week.
And this is the same supervisor that hung out with the 2 Caucasian dudes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
3 times a week, I'm meeting with the both of them. So I'm asking them, where is there a timeline? Like, how long is this going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And her supervisor told me he doesn't know. This is the first time they've ever done something like this.
Really? That was the
Mhm.
first time, and it happened after you filed a complaint?
Right. So
Okay.
at that point, when I went home that evening, I filed an EEOC. No, I'm sorry. I started going to meet with different attorneys because I'm like, this isn't right, and
Mm,
something has to happen. Like I just know this can't be right. This can't be legal, right?
mm-hmm,
I also started going to the doctor because it was affecting my health.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I had to seek counseling. I was being put on anxiety medication. One of the attorneys that I met with told me to make the process easier was for me to file the EEOC complaint and then retain an attorney. So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
The attorney also suggested that I tell a member of HR
Mm-hmm.
that I'm sorry, I'm jumping a gun. I did seek the attorney. They told me to file an EEOC complaint. I did that. I later find out after that that HR was the one that was controlling this system that was supposed to be controlled by a third party, an outsourced company.
Oh my goodness. That's a conflict of interest.
Absolutely. So they did nothing about it.
Mm.
So then after I returned the attorney, she told me to have HR hire an outside attorney to come in and do an investigation. They did. Someone that was unbiased, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So she came in and she met with members of HR and my ex supervisor first, of course. Had all of my records.
mm-hmm,
So everything my supervisor had to say about me, I had documentation proving otherwise. I
mm-hmm,
also told this lady about, the complaint that I made in the system.
mm-hmm,
Well, the lady that was over HR, the head of HR,
mm-hmm.
she told this attorney that was doing her investigation,
The
right, within the
unbiased,
company.
the unbiased attorney, not the one that
Right.
you, okay. Mm-hmm.
She told her that she knew nothing about a complaint that I had submitted, a second complaint.
Mm.
So when I went for my other meeting, I had a copy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
They deleted it out of the system.
Oh my goodness.
But see, they didn't know that I printed out a copy.
Right, right.
So I'm still having these meetings 3 times a week. It was just so much to the point that I think it continued after the Christmas holidays. I told my attorney, she called the outsourced attorney. She met with me. She was upset that they were still having these meetings with me because
Mm-hmm.
every project my supervisor would give me, now she's giving me large projects to challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working from home. I'm going in early. I'm working late. I'm bringing my laptop home. I'm working from home just to make sure I'm completing all these projects so they wouldn't have any excuse not to
Mm-hmm.
take me up this performance review, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So after Christmas holidays, I come back and I told the lady, I informed the lady that they still had me on this performance review. She was upset. So that same day, my supervisor emailed me and said that they were taking me off of the performance review. But every time I would ask about it, I'm like, what is the purpose? Why are we still meeting 3 times a week? I don't understand this. It was just bad. Me sitting around watching these guys, like the guy who had my same role, he would literally be watching YouTube all day while I'm working.
Wow. I was going to ask you when you said that you were still employed after you filed that complaint. What was that like? What was the work environment like
It
at
was
that point?
very toxic, very toxic,
Mm. So in
very much
addition
so.
to the performance, then was there a different treatment at work? The supervisor, she's knowing that you have now filed this complaint and you are
Right.
still working there.
She was giving me unnecessary work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, really, she was the job was pretty much, so the older Caucasian lady that was on my team, I worked very closely with her,
Mm-hmm.
very close with her. She pretty much trained me.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy that she was really close to had the same role as the older lady that I work with. I don't like to use that term because you wouldn't think that she's her age, but
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless, she trained me. Like she trained. So everything I did, she pretty much trained me,
Mm-hmm.
right? She did not like her, but she didn't mess with her because she was scared of her.
Okay.
She was intimidated by her, right? She knew she couldn't get away with messing with her. So she didn't mess with her. Well, she was also upset because she trained me and not her friend that was on our team, the older white guy, right? So he would want me to pretty much do his work, check behind him. I'm not doing that. That's not my role, right?
Right.
I'm not. So he would go and report to her, then she'll call me in the office and telling me I'm not being a team player.
Oh, wow.
Right.
And this was after the complaint.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Nothing changed. It just got worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he would watch me and run back and tell her certain things. I'm like, what? She said, are you on your phone? I'm like, I'm listening to music while I'm working.
The same as he was doing when he was watching YouTube.
Right. It was crazy. It was awful. I also asked the lady that's over the HR department. I told her that, I just had a concern about the lack of diversity within the company. She told me that the lady who was over the hiring process in HR, which was my supervisor's friend, she said that she would try to hire minorities, but none were interested. I said, well, what's the process? She said she would advertise for minority employees. How? Like, there's no specific website where you go and hire minorities. Like, what is her process? This is a land, timber, and development company. You can reach out to HBCUs that specialize in land development. You have FAMU, that's the agricultural college. You have high schools that you can go and, set up a table and just introduce these kids to this industry. Like, what's the process? What's happening? Nothing. There was another job that I applied for a promotion, and I was told after I presented them with all of my qualifications, and I asked them to do a comparison. My qualifications outweighed the other guy, the white guy, and he was hired.
What? He was promoted? Wow.
I'm sorry, promoted. Yep.
Wow. So how did your relationship with this company end?
I was fired.
What?
I was fired. So what happened was COVID hit and everyone had to work from home, right? So she would have weekly meetings with the team, which I was fine with. But she wanted to continue these after we had already stopped, right? The performance review. Now I'm home. She wants to continue these 2 or 3 times a week meetings with me.
And only you?
And only me. Okay. Right. So, of course I was doing it because that's my job. One of the meetings, I think my daughter was sick. I missed the meeting. I sent her a message and apologized. My apologies. My baby was sick. Can we reschedule? She said, sure. She rescheduled the meeting. 2 days later, I was contacted by her in HR and said I was fired.
And what reason did they give for firing you?
Lack of communication.
Because of you being out and missing the meeting?
Yep.
Did you have attendance issues?
I did not.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So now all of this happened and you still had the complaint open with the EEOC. Where were you in that process with the EEOC?
That was around summertime of 2020. I didn't get a response from EEOC until the following spring. So around March, April of 2021.
Okay. Yeah, it is a long process if you go through the EEOC. Wow. So I do want to talk, you mentioned something that I think is very important. You talked about having documentation. So I kind of want to go back to 2 things. The first grievance that you filed and you found out that the male counterpart was making 15 grand more than you. How did you find that out?
So it's a funny story. because of the position that I've always been in, with the city and both departments, my position was always the only one. And I was, of course, the only Black female. Female, period, but Black female was what made me stand out, right? So in my division, I was the only engineer and drafter. In the other division that the young man worked in, that was the only position, same positions, right? Same role. So his supervisor was downstairs bragging, just running his mouth. I was always on a small team because of my position, right? So it was me, my supervisor, and an older female. She was like a mother figure to me, right? So we're standing around and he's bragging about this young, bright dude that he just hired and da, 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 da. And he called out his salary. So me and my work mom gave each other a look, right? Because she had already been there for years. I think she had already been there for probably about 15 years. I was there for about 2 years. So nonetheless, we're looking at each other like this dude is really just, running his like he was.
Right.
So after he left, my work mom and I were sitting there looking at each other like, are you freaking kidding me? Because now his salary, this dude he brought in, was making the same amount as my work mom. He had already been there for 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
So we're both standing there like livid, like, what?
And how long had he been there? Did you all start at the same time?
He had just started. I had already been there for like 2 years.
Oh no. Okay.
Right. So yeah, we were pissed. So my work mom is the one who encouraged, because I knew nothing about agreements. I'm still a rookie. I'm new to any government type job. So she's the one that strongly encouraged me. You need to file a grievance. And at the end of that grievance, she actually benefited from it too, because once they matched my salary, now I'm making as much as her. My supervisor was able to help her get a raise. Right. I kept track of everything. Thanks to my work mom, she helped me throughout it. You call the union. That's why you pay them. Every time you have a meeting with them, and every time you submit any type of paperwork, keep a copy of it. Keep a folder. Keep your folder on you at all times. Right. And I did that. And it was with the grievance. I don't know if it's still the same because that's been over 20 years ago, but at the time with the grievance, there are steps, right? First, you have to submit the first complaint to your direct supervisor. You give them time to respond. Then it goes to their supervisor, which was a division chief. Give them time to respond. Then they have to send it to the department head. Give them time to respond. But that time could take anywhere between 3 to 4 months. And of course, they're going to sit on it, right?
Right.
Because if you don't do anything about it, it goes away.
Right. And they think it's swept under the rug.
Absolutely.
Well, so what was the outcome of your EEOC case with the last company that you filed the complaint with?
So I received a right to sue letter.
Okay.
And that was it. By the time I received that, I was just exhausted. I was tired.
Yeah.
I was ready for everything to be over. And the thing about it is, it was never about the money. I knew God would make a way for me. The pay was good. Outside of what I went through, the job was like an ideal job. The pay was really good. You had annual bonuses, annual raises. You can work from home. So it was a cush job, but it wasn't worth the expense of my health.
That's right. And I'm glad you said that. Do not let me forget to go back to the mental health piece, but I want to talk about the right to sue. What is a right to sue letter? What does that mean?
Pretty much they're not making a decision either way.
So they're not saying that they were able to prove that what was your complaint? Retaliation?
Retaliation, discrimination. I had 3 of them. Bias, and I forgot what else it was. But it was pretty much retaliation, discrimination, showing favoritism. So the right to sue letter that I received, it's like they weren't making it. They weren't. It's pretty much saying in more words than one. They're not saying that I'm not how can I say this?
They're not saying that you were not
That my story
discriminated.
isn't that right, right.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yours,
They're not agreeing or disagreeing with either one of us.
but
They're
they
just
felt
giving me
like
a right to sue.
right, because I believe that there is another result, which is no cause. Sometimes they can find no cause at all. So
Right.
I think a right to sue is still a positive. At least they saw something that said it's something there. But yes, the process does take a long time with the EEOC, and it can be exhausting, and it could definitely take a toll on your mental health. So
Absolutely. And it did.
yeah, that's what it does. And a lot of people drop out at that point. Like what
Yeah.
you're saying, instead of pursuing the right to sue, it's like it's so much has happened. I've had anxiety. I've been having migraines and all of these things. I can't do it anymore. And companies, they either bet on us not being educated enough to file the complaint in the first place, or two, us giving up in the end. But
Yep.
I think in your situation, they saw that they had to have their ducks in a row from that point on if they didn't have them before.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad that you spoke up for yourself. I
Yeah.
know you talked about changes made in the
Hmm.
organization as a result of that.
Yeah. So they have since then they created a DEI team.
Mm-hmm.
The other black lady that works there, she's now being promoted, which I'm happy about.
Mm-hmm.
They've since hired a few more minorities,
Okay, good.
but that's pretty much it. I still have relationships with people that work there, and they said they've noticed a few changes by them hiring in a few more minorities. But other than that, I mean, it is what it is.
Mm,
My thing was to make them realize that you're wrong. You're dead wrong. It's never been about the money. Never.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It was a principle.
It was a principle. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm.
That's why at the point with the right to sue, and it's crazy because when I received that right to sue letter, now I have to find another attorney that's willing to fight them with this letter, because there's another decision that could have been made to make the process easier, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's not the letter that I received.
Okay. I got it.
So now I have to, because my attorney was a contingency attorney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she didn't have the manpower to fight with a right to sue letter.
Right.
So
She needed
now I have
more.
to go through right. So I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I'm done. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. They get it now.
Yep.
I shot them with the EOC complaint, right?
Right. And your
So now,
evidence. I think your evidence shocked them
right,
too, because they felt like, you know what, this is just another one. A lot of times they get frivolous lawsuits. So they're probably thinking, oh, this is another frivolous lawsuit. But no, this one had some
right.
substance that took it all the way to that. So, I'm happy to hear that you spoke up for yourself.
Yeah,
Although it wasn't a monetary award, changes were made, and you laid the path for other minorities when they came to the company. So
right.
um, I do want to thank you for coming on and being willing to share your story. Do you want to add anything else before we close?
I do. I just wish that more people would not be afraid to speak up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like I say, I still have relationships with people there, and there's still a lot of things that are happening that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
But now they are afraid to speak up out of fear of retaliation
Mm.
because of what happened to me.
Oh.
And I respect that. I can't make people, they have to, thankfully, I have a spouse that I'm able to fall back on,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does not have that. So they have no other choice but to sit there and take it. But
Mm-hmm.
if we were to join forces
Mm-hmm.
and let these people know that we're no longer going to take it,
Mm-hmm.
that's gender, culture, race. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is these companies, they know that they can get away with things
Mm-hmm.
because they have power over their employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like they have a power over the families. I
Mm-hmm.
have power over you. What are you going to do? How are you going to
Mm-hmm.
feed your families? How are you going to take care of your family?
Yep.
Right? So
Mm-hmm.
something needs to be done.
I wholeheartedly agree. And one way we can take away their power is by empowering ourselves educating ourselves on the law, knowing our rights, and speaking up for ourselves. So, Takesha, I want to thank you again for coming on the show, being transparent, and just open and sharing your experience with speaking up for yourself. I'm happy to know that your voice brought about fairness and pay to you, as well as other changes for other employees. I'd be remiss if I did not pay homage to Lily Ledbetter. She was an activist who fought for pay equity for men and women. And in 2009, President Barack Obama signed into law the Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. I'm forever grateful for her and her courage to speak up for herself. Lily Ledbetter, April 14, 1938 to October 12, 2024. Thank you for paving the way. I want to close out with our toolkit takeaways. We have four. They are documentation, mental health, retaliation, and the three P's. Remember, documentation is evidence. It's also the backbone of a complaint. Also, remember mental health, that your mental health is affected if you stay silent about disrespect or about being treated differently in the workplace because of your characteristics. Keep in mind, retaliation is against the law. And the three P's: preparation, patience, and persistence. They will take you a long way in the administrative process. If you don't have an HR department, or if you don't trust the one you have, feel free to contact us at eerightstoolkit.com. You can book a consultation or you can chat with an HR representative. We'd love to fill the gap between you and your HR department. Don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Employee Rights Toolkit. As we close the podcast, I'd like to read you your employee Miranda rights. You have the right to not remain silent. Anything you say to HR can and shall be used to prevent further discriminatory acts in the workplace. You have the right to consult an employment attorney if the discriminatory acts continue. If you cannot afford an employment attorney, you can file a complaint with your local, state, or federal agency that enforces anti discrimination laws. If you decide to remain silent without addressing the disrespect, you risk experiencing bouts of stress and anxiety. Knowing and understanding your rights as I have explained them to you, are you willing to speak up for yourself? You have now been Mirandized. Be empowered, and I'll see you next time.